gracias a grabar. Y tengo, tengo el placer, I have the pleasure to present Michael Barnett here with us. And I want to introduce him. He is a licensed professional and a clinical counselor in Pasadena, California, and co-founder and director of the Center EFT Los Angeles. Michael is one of approximately 25 certified emotional focus therapy trainers in the United States and is recognized for pioneering work at an intersection of trauma, addiction, and attachment for more than 15 years. Michael has specialized in adapting and extending the EFT model of work effectively with the couples and families navigating addictive processes, drawing from extensive experience in residential treatment, outpatient settings, and long-term clinical practice. He has developed advanced trainings and a master class that supports therapists in modifying EFT interventions for complex presentation involving trauma and substance or behavioral addictions. Michael is also author of the Emotional Focus Therapy Workbook for Addiction, Healing the Loneliness and Shame that Hinders Addictive Behaviors, which distills his integrative approach into accessible attachment-based guidelines for both therapists and clients. Y quienes no han comprado el libro, in the ones that they don't have the book already, just look for it. It's really excellent and can help a lot in your work from now on. Also, Michael is coming to Mexico on February 20 and 21, giving a trainer in Spanish, in English, but simultaneously translating the training. And all of you are invited to come. And if anyone want any information, please let me know through the chat and we will send it. And later we can also send a link where you can find information for that. And also, our dear Michael has been a long-time contributor to EFT community. He is known for making challenging clinical territory accessible, humane, and deeply grounded in attachment. Today, you're going to have an opportunity to see that excellent professional and wonderful human being in action. So I stop here and I let you enjoy the time with him. Welcome, welcome, Michael.
Thank you very much. I feel very flattered listening to that. I'm probably blushing. Um, it's really nice to be here with all of you. So I would like to say welcome to all of you. I know you have busy lives, and I really very genuinely appreciate you taking time out of your Friday to spend here talking about addiction and trauma and EFT. So welcome to this webinar. And before everybody rushes out of here at the end, I just want to thank Norma and the EFT Center in Costa Rica for hosting this. And I also want to thank Ali for inviting me to Mexico City. I can't tell you how excited I am for this opportunity, and it will be a full 2 days. So this will be a little bit of an appetizer. And when we go to Mexico City, it will be a full meal. There's a lot to modify for the model. So to give you a little bit of a background for where this work came from, before I went to graduate school, I worked in the addiction field. They called us entry-level counselors, and very honestly, none of us knew what we were doing. But we were working in residential treatment. I was working with adolescents and young adults. And it was one of the things I wanted to do before going to graduate school to make sure that I really wanted to go down this path of being a therapist. And here I am. When I finished graduate school, I worked in two more addiction treatment centers. And by the time I became an EFT therapist, and we were just beginning, and this dates me, we were just beginning the listserv back then. The contraindications in the model were very hard and fast. So if you saw any of the potential contraindications, you were not supposed to use EFT. And of course, addiction was one of those contraindications. So that left me in a very awkward position because I had spent almost 9 years working in the addiction field, and all of my colleagues were counselors in the addiction field. So my referrals came from the addiction world. And what I noticed is I was working pretty well with people struggling with addiction. I was only doing couples work in EFT at the time, and I saw my couples getting better and growing, and people beginning to use the power of attachment to essentially replace addiction. Now, at the time, I could not have told you how I was doing this. I had not figured out what I was doing differently, but it was working. And when I was reading the listserv posts, I kept seeing post after post that was saying, we did an assessment. One of the partners is struggling with addiction. We were referring them out to another therapist or an addiction treatment center. And I thought, my gosh, we have an incredible model. This works really well. It's a very powerful model. And I'm observing people really heal. So I started on my own odyssey. And it's been, as Norma was saying, about 15 years of really trying to figure out what am I doing differently? How could I figure this out? How could I learn how to teach this? And what you're about to get a taste of is about what I would call addiction and EFT 3.0. My initial training was very high level and very conceptual. Then I had this incredible opportunity where we integrated EFT into a treatment center, an addiction treatment center in Atlanta when I was there at the time. And the only different thing in the protocol was EFT. So we got to do a 3-year study. My part of the study was to watch a small segment of every single session on video. So I spent 3 years watching video after video after video of EFT being done in addiction treatment. So I learned a lot. And so 2.0 was beginning to teach more clinically, and 3.0, which you're going to get a little taste of, and the 2-day training in Mexico, we will do a very, very intense focus on not only when EFT goes well with addiction, but what the challenges are, what that looks like, and how we find our way through that. So, how would I say this? What I'm about to offer you here is as much of my understanding of addiction and how it's grown over time, a little bit is my own journey, and really speak to what an important place I believe EFT plays in treating addiction. It's just the beginning, but I think it's very important what we do. And one of the things I hope you get out of this, because I know a lot of people are very cautious when it comes to working with addiction. Some people say, I never want to work with addiction. But I hope you feel more confident because so much of what you already know how to do works extremely well with addiction. There are some things we need to modify, but the heart of what we do with EFT works extremely well with addiction. So we'll talk about how and why, okay? So that's me. And what I'd like us to do now is something we don't often do, and that is take a moment for yourself. And I would like to share my screen. Okay. Sorry. Okay. Okay. Can you see that okay? Yes? Okay.
Yes, perfect.
Excellent. Okay. So, to tell you a little bit about this, I want to offer you a bit of a context of addiction and addiction treatment. And I find it really important. Uh, what we accept as the norm, what we accept as common in terms of treatment, is very complicated, in my opinion. And it requires people who are kind of like EFT therapy geeks like me to start really reading about it and doing research and trying to understand where does all of this come from. And I'll tell you why I have gone on a long journey to figure that out. So I want to offer a context of the addiction field. I want to also start pointing us in the direction of what it means to get the feeling of working with addiction from an attachment frame and then also from a trauma-informed frame, and speak a little bit about EFT's place in all of that. And then I'll show you a video clip of what I feel is a nice small segment of a couple session where the husband has struggled with alcoholism for years. And I'm bringing EFT into their treatment. So you will get to see that and talk a little bit about it. And then I hope we have a few minutes for questions and answers at the end, okay? So if we were to proceed here, I'd like you for right now just to take a moment and if you have your hands on the keyboard of your computer to perhaps sit back, take a few deep breaths, I'm sorry, and get comfortable. I'll tell on myself here. I have two computers out, one in English because I can't read Spanish, and I'm trying to keep up with both. So, this is not advancing the way I would like it to. I'm sorry. You may not be able to hear this. I'm going to stop my share.
Maybe before, if you put the music and we go into break rooms, they are not able to listen to the music in the break rooms.
No, I don't want them to. Let's go into the break rooms after the music.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. I'm sorry I didn't tell you that, but I do want to, hold on.
Eh,
There's a slide that I put music on and I don't seem to see it here.
Because it wasn't in the in when you give it to me.
I think I added it though.
Okay.
So let me make sure it's here. No, it's not here. Okay. Well, you're just gonna have to listen to my voice. That's okay. You'll just listen.
Mientras Michael les lleva con esta imaginación dirigida, por favor, estén claros en que vamos a mandarlos a break rooms en parejas, así que por favor todos estén disponibles para que yo pueda hacer eso rápidamente y no perdamos tiempo y podamos seguir sus indicaciones.
Okay. So what I would like to do here would be a guided imagery. So I would like you all to just relax and get comfortable where you're sitting. Please put down anything that you might be taking notes with. If you're comfortable, I'd like you just to turn your awareness inward and close your eyes for a minute. And I want to walk you through something, okay? I'm curious, you can let me know if can you hear this music at all? Yes?
When you started,
Can you hear it? A little bit? Okay. So just turn your awareness inward and just notice what comes up. No one is immune to addiction. Open yourself to your story with addiction. It may be 1 degree, 2 degrees, or 5 degrees of separation. All of us have been affected by the impact of addiction in some way or another. Who in your world comes to mind? Maybe it's your own struggle. Maybe your partner, your spouse. Perhaps it was your father, your grandmother, brother or sister. Perhaps a very, very close friend got caught in addiction's tangled, toxic web. Or maybe someone you work with was pulled out to sea by addiction's rip currents. A beloved neighbor, a colleague, and of course, certainly our clients. No one is immune to addiction. Perhaps you have been impacted by the way your culture or your community views addiction, or worse, people who struggle with addiction. Sit with this for a few moments. What are you aware of? Notice what surfaces. Notice where it lives in your body. And most importantly, notice where it lives in your heart. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. And what I would like to do here is in breakout rooms with just two people each, take a few moments to share with each other what came up. Maybe we'll break for 10 minutes, 5 minutes a person. And I want to remind everybody that there's no obligation to share. I know this is extremely personal. So whatever you feel comfortable with and whatever you feel safe with sharing. But in no small part do I ask people to do this because it's pretty easy to bring biases from our own life experience into the therapy room when we're working with people struggling with addiction. I know I have. And those biases and some very difficult experiences in my own life at times have made it difficult for me to be fully present with the people I'm working with. So I wanted to invite you to take a moment to be with your experiences and, like we emphasize in EFT, to un-isolate this, not be alone with it, to allow somebody to come alongside you and hold it with you. Okay? So we will send you into breakout rooms for 10 minutes and then we'll come back together. Okay?
Voy un segundo porque tengo que crear los grupos a partir de las personas que están. Eh, Vas y te salís y meto otra persona, Elena. Ok. Ahora voy a chequearlos nada más un momentito para poder quitar a la persona que no puede participar.
Norma, si gustas, úsame como comodín. Haz los grupos y cuando falte alguien, me metes a mí o a
Ok,
los demás.
sí. Eh, eh, Deme un segundo porque tengo que mover gente, entonces. Ok, Yana, tengo que sacar otra persona, nada más deme un segundo.
Michael, just so you know what's happening, Norma is making the groups, and some people left unexpectedly, and some are letting us know that they can't participate in breakout rooms. So that's why it's taking a while.
Yes. 32. Wait a second, Yael.
Michael, you're muted.
I just noticed that. Thank you. You know what? Since not everybody can participate in it, we
Wait,
don't
wait a
have to.
second. No, wait a second. I have it also, but I need just to
Okay.
check one person.
Okay. Well,
And
thank you for doing this. It's
don't worry. Okay, Michael, don't go there. And the rest of us, we will go. Yael, you don't go. Y Elena tampoco vaya, ya que no pueden participar en esto, ¿ok? Listo. Ready. 10 minutos. Vamos para esto. Allá van todos. Your turn. You can go there as you see the invitation to go into the break rooms. Paola, ¿vos querés ir a grupo?
Hola, perdón, es que apenas acabo de entrar, entonces no sé qué, estoy un poco
Ok,
perdida.
punto de partida, déjame ver. Punto de partida, vos estás. Ok, te voy, te voy a mandar. Usted allá, Mariana, vos estás en grupo y Elizabeth también. Cervantes.
Sí, pero no sé por qué me volvió acá. Norma,
¿Sabes
habré
en qué
hecho
grupo
algo.
estabas?
No llegué a ver.
Ok,
Creo que el 12, pero no estoy segura.
perfecto. Váyanse ustedes dos al 5, Paola. Este, y Mariana, voy a ver si estás en el 12, ¿no?
Vale.
Em, aquí te voy a poner Marilu, Elizabeth, es que no te veo.
Yo, yo sí los veo a ustedes.
Em, Mariana, tú estás en el 12,
Ok,
pero te voy a pasar al 13 y te devuelves, ¿ok?
me devuelvo a
Quédate
donde
ahí,
Norma.
no te vayas, te voy a pasar,
Ah,
¿ok? Te voy a pasar al
bien.
13 y ahora te paso al 12. Ahí estás.
Me voy al 12 ahora, Norma, entonces.
Y Elizabeth,
Gracias.
te paso al 11.
¿Cómo me paso?
Ahí vas.
Yo no.
Aunque queden tres, dale. No.
well, thank you for doing this, Norma. I didn't mean to make so much work.
No, it's because we are 72 people. So,
Ah.
so I have 35 groups.
Norma, estoy haciendo todo mal, me fui de nuevo,
No te puedes
perdón.
ir, no toques la computadora, Mariana.
¡Qué desastre!
O sea, ya voy a mandarte de vuelta.
Por favor.
y hablen las tres.
Me voy al 17, Normi.
Dale.
Pero
Sí.
en el 2 se quedó alguien solito,
No,
una
ya
mujer.
pasé a tu compañera el 17 también. Dale.
Gracias.
Hay tres, así que ya se quedan ahí en tres. Ok.
Stop. Thank you.
It was just because.
72 people is phenomenal. That's great.
Yes, that is great. I was pushing you to approve the thing because when I have enough time, that the people really make the space and come here. So
So nice. Wow, that's great. That is great.
yes, we have 71 now, and
Amazing. It's great.
I hope
Very good.
that this would help to put a lot of more people into Mexico.
That's good. Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. It's very thoughtful of you.
Welcome.
I am so excited about Mexico. I can't wait.
It's going to
That's
be
gonna be
really nice. I have two
good.
students that I supervise from Mexico, and they are already in. They were like, "Oh, let's go! Don't tell me anything. Just go."
That's
And
great.
grupo 17. Let me check. This was a really nice experience when when we did it in the trainers meeting.
Uh, I'm
Yes,
so glad you enjoyed it.
yes, I like it a lot.
Oh, good.
I didn't go into a group because if someone comes here and there, then
Of course.
I can't
Of course.
do both things.
You are the control room. Right. Yeah, it was very nice to do this with the trainers, actually. 'Cause I know it's really personal, but it felt like the other two trainings were also very personal. So I thought this will be great.
Yes, because as you say, everyone has someone in the family or close enough to
Yeah,
your heart that
exactly.
is in addiction or was.
Exactly. No, exactly. Exactly. And I have had experiences where some parts of my own life I hadn't finished with, and working with people struggling with addiction brought it up, and I was not very present,
Uh,
or as I would like to be.
and I think that this exercise can bring up the sense of awareness in order to be able to enjoy the training or the experience more.
Yeah, I agree. It makes it very personal, right? And now people can embrace it.
We are two 30 minutes to 2 minutes and 30 seconds and
Great.
it's finished. Okay.
Yeah, that's great. We just finished our externship here, which was great.
Oh, nice.
We did it in person, and we had about 70 people, which was
Wow.
great. And we had a training team of 20 people.
Oh, yes, with that much people there, you
Yeah.
need that. Yes.
And we like this space. It's very close to our house. And in Los Angeles, it's kind of always sunny. It's always really pretty. So they have a patio in the back, and we put breakout groups out there. Well, it rained so hard for 5 days, and we all had to stay inside the whole time. We made it work. It was very cozy. It was very tight, but it was a really good training.
Oh, so
So
nice.
yeah, yeah. So we'll start core skills in January, and it's already filled up, and um, we just have a lovely we have a lovely community and people got very excited about the model and a lot of students, which is great, still in graduate school.
That's nice. Okay.
It is.
And it, did you ask for them, to the students, to be maybe finishing psychology, or they can just come and jump in if, even if they are not that much into the career?
No, that they have to be in their graduate programs,
Okay.
and many times the reason they even come is because their graduate school professors are EFT therapists.
Yeah,
So
that's
they
nice.
learn, yeah, they learn a lot about EFT and they get excited about it. And what's really nice is then when they start practicing, their number one model is EFT.
Yes, that is great. When they
It,
have this
it is.
opportunity, it's great.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. So we're having some fun with that. And then this will be my last presentation until January, which I'm very, this has been a very busy time.
Yes, I
So,
can
so
imagine.
this was amazing, Norma. I presented a webinar for a very large addiction organization here. It was online. We had 1,000 people show up.
Oh God, that is wonderful.
I've never had 1,000 people. I've maybe had like 150 at best, 1,000 people showed up. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah,
So my passion is to get this into the addiction world. And I really hope we can do that. It'd be really, really neat to do that. That
nice,
was really exciting. Yeah.
nice.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
They are already coming back. So,
Okay.
oh, congratulations. You're
Thank
spreading the
you.
word and your knowledge and your experience.
It's
That's
growing EFT in this other area, right? In the addiction area. So I'm very that makes me really happy. I'm very happy about that. Potential. Yeah. Oops. Hmm.
okay. Estamos de vuelta. Okay, we are back again. Michael, everybody is here
Yep.
now.
Oh, great. So I'm going to stop the share. Oh, I guess. Okay, I can't see everybody. Well, great. Well, welcome back. Um, what I wanted to ask is if I have a question for you, and maybe a couple people could just share their thoughts. Okay? Share your thoughts. But one, how was this for you to talk to a colleague about your experience? I hope it was okay. I know it's very personal and sometimes it's pretty heavy. So, in my opinion, there are both obstacles and opportunities.
Pregunta, ¿cómo ahora?
Ajá.
And the reason I say that is
¿Cómo
I
por
think
estar
I think some
respondiendo?
people might have their microphones on.
Yes,
Would you mind
please.
muting? There are a lot of us here.
Yes.
Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate that. Um, so I was wondering, now sitting with your experience, whatever came up for you in the guided imagery, and having had the opportunity to share it and not simply sit alone with it. When you think about sitting with your clients and addiction shows up, could maybe one or two of you share a couple thoughts about how you see your own experience maybe providing an opportunity to be even more helpful? Anybody?
¿Alguien que se anime? Ok. A compartir un poquito cómo esta experiencia de haber podido conversar sobre el impacto de esto en sus vidas o cómo lo viven puede hacer que sus intervenciones sean mejor? María Eugenia, gracias.
Hola,
Hola.
¿en español o en inglés, Norma? Como hay traducción simultánea, ¿lo hago en
Puedes
inglés?
hacerlo en inglés si te sientes cómoda para que Michael
Ok,
lo... Ajá.
exacto. Hi, Michael.
Hi.
So nice to be here. Thank you
Um,
so much.
you're welcome.
My name is Maria Eugenia. I'm from Dominican Republic, and I was sharing with the person that I was in the breakout room with, whose name is Maria Eugenia also, that I have a very, very, very close friend who's an addict in recovery, and it's the fact of knowing him and knowing his heart uh, has been of great help in the moments that I have been in the situation of accompanying someone who has an addict close, like I don't know, a husband, a peer, a father.
Yes.
When you see it from afar, it's like, oh, why don't they just stop? That's it, just stop. But when you can listen to these people talk, and when you know their hearts, and you can see that how noble that what's really moving in for them, and how their spirit is compromised almost in pain. So it's very humanizing, uh, in the sense of helping someone else. You can see them through other eyes, through more compassion and humanity.
Thank you. My work is done here. We're done. That was beautiful. Thank you very much. That was really,
Thank you for the opportunity.
of course, of course. Does anyone else have anything you'd like to add or any other additional thoughts or ideas or experiences?
¿Alguien
Like the
más?
part. Yo podría, si quieres, Norma.
Ah, dale, María Claudia.
Sí. Hi.
Hi.
Michael.
Hi.
The part that I wanted to add was I read Gabor Mate years ago, and he talks about how addiction is so ingrained, in our culture in so many different ways, and it really helped me understand my own story, my own history with addiction. With those, that sweet tooth, of having that craving of something sweet, of something candy or chocolate, probably more than I should many times, and that recognition of that, um, you know, craving and the drive, and which may not be pathological, but it's clearly addictive, and it helped me understand and integrate that much more into the work that I do, because in my case, just as in your case, when you were in training, addiction was something that was clearly something that I felt was outside of the scope of my capability, and I would refer out. And EFT has helped me understand, and see it from a different lens, but also adding this awareness of my own relationship with those cravings and desires, and the difficulty stopping something that I recognize may not be so healthy in me. So thank you.
That's great. I mean, that offers a genuine sense of empathy when you can genuinely relate to the experience, right? So thank you both. So if your own awareness of the way addiction has touched your life is really important, and it can provide opportunities for being much more sensitive and aware, and like I was saying, bring some empathy. It can also provide obstacles, and I can speak to that. I won't go into detail, but a lot of us have experienced a lot of loss around addiction, and sometimes some other very difficult stories around addiction. And sometimes those stories have not gone away. The scars or the shadows of them have not been processed. And so sometimes, and I've had this happen, when clients struggling with addiction come into therapy with me, it can start striking personal chords, and a lot of self of the therapist can come up. So it can be an obstacle if you don't pay attention. It can be an obstacle if you don't assess your life and the way addictions impacted you. And again, I really don't know anybody that has not been impacted by addiction. So I just wanted to start with just a little bit of this. In the bigger training, we go into much more detail around this. But I hope that was helpful just to be thoughtful about working with addiction. Where we start with addiction work is us, of course. We are self as instrument, right? The therapy comes through us. And of course, in the therapy, we're having a relational experience. We're working with couples, families. I personally only work with couples and families, but I'm part of that system in the therapy, and the therapy is being run through me. So just having the opportunity to sit with our life experiences, I think, can be an enormously important part of doing this work. And for any of you who have worked in addiction treatment centers, you know that if your biases show up and you're sitting with somebody struggling with addiction, the sensitivity to shame is so intense that people know immediately if you're judging them, and all of a sudden the door will close. In private practice, they may just stop coming to therapy. So this part of working with addiction is really important, and I just wanted to bring a little bit of that into the picture for you. So thank you, and I hope you thanked your partners, whoever you spoke with, because I know it's very personal. So I just wanted to offer a little bit of self of the therapist before we move on. So I am going to move on, and this might seem a little unusual that I'm starting here, but I think this was a very big moment. And that moment was, at least here, and I would like to just kind of offer context. My experience is primarily shaped by the context of addiction treatment here in the United States, and it may be very different in your countries. But what I remember very clearly was reading a New York Times article, 2021, and up until the pandemic, at least in the United States, the highest number of deaths by overdose from addiction had been, I think it was 75,000 people, something like that. By the end of 2021, it jumped up to 108,000 people. That's a massive, massive change. That's almost 33%, almost a third difference. It's huge. And so why am I talking about that here? I think it's very important because what I think it helped people see, and I know here I preach to the choir, we believe in EFT, we believe in attachment, we work with the attachment lens all the time. But what we started noticing is people were very frightened, and it was medically indicated to prevent the spread of COVID to socially isolate. So we were being told to separate as community. And I know for myself, for example, my family lives on the East Coast of the United States. I live on the West Coast. I didn't get to see them for a few years. I know other people had tragic circumstances where there were illnesses or injuries and their loved ones couldn't visit them in the hospital. So we were being prescribed disconnection at a time when people were frightened, did not have access to community, did not have access to one another, did not have access to resources. And of course, what starts happening in times when people are in great distress and we can't find people to lean into to help just be with us, of course, substances and addiction starts to make sense in a different way. And I think what it started to show the world was a correlation that many of us in the EFT world are very familiar with, but the correlation between loneliness and disconnection and addiction. And so when I say I think we work very well with addiction in our model, it's in no small part because of that. So I can't call this a silver lining, but it really helped a greater number of people start to see the connection. And so what I'd like to speak to is a little bit about what often happens when we first encounter couples or families where addiction is organizing a cycle, right? And the first thing I'd like to say is that's really not how the original cycle starts. Most people in their relationships do not begin a relationship where addiction is the thing that has hijacked the relationship. Oftentimes, I hear this story over and over, and you may as well. People meet at a certain time in life. They kind of party together. Substance use, whether it's alcohol or other things, become part of their lives together. And then what starts happening is life changes, right? People may have a job that's really important, or they may start having children, or people just start maturing out of a partying lifestyle, but they don't do it at the same time. One partner seems to do it, and the other partner still continues living a life that feels very different, almost developmentally, right? It's like the college kid and the mature adult. I'm overgeneralizing, but changes start happening. And then the thing people start fighting over is substance use or behavioral addiction use. And no more is that something they share together, and it creates a greater and greater divide. So I say all of this. It's a little different in families. I've worked with many families where it's actually one of the parents or both parents seem to use substances, one of them perhaps in a more addictive way. And so children are born into an addictive system, and that's very different. But most relationships, significant other relationships, do not usually start with addiction being the thing that organizes the cycle. Now, by the time we see people, people are in great distress. And my experience, it may be different than yours, but by this time, addiction is chronic. It's been there for a long time. And chronic addiction really starts to change the system. Sorry, I'm keeping up on two computers. It changes the system dramatically because by the time we see people and they come to our offices, there's incredible escalation and conflict. It could look like people are actually dramatically fighting. The escalation could look like people are so distant at this point, but disconnection is so present. And what starts happening is empathy becomes eroded, trust gets fractured. There's so many attachment injuries with addiction. And we start to see people who are losing hope. And so part of why I say some of this to you is we start to encounter a very difficult and a very complex psychotherapy. So one of the things that I think I falsely understood for many years, I equated addictive processes in some ways with an avoidant attachment strategy because they both have an impact of deactivating or removing or creating distance between an emotional experience and whatever people are doing. So if I avoid, I can somehow deactivate my emotional experience, deactivate my attachment system. If I use substances or behaviors, I can distance myself from my emotional world. But what I came to really understand very clearly is addiction takes no prisoners. Addiction does not have favorites. So people with avoidance strategies are very susceptible to becoming addicted. People with anxious strategies are very susceptible to becoming addicted. And fearful avoidance strategies actually are highly correlated with addiction. As a matter of fact, one of the things we need to pay a lot of attention to when we start helping people who have a fearful avoidance strategy move into their emotional world is they don't tip out of their window of tolerance and as a way of coping with that, relapse or start using, right? That's a really big part of navigating the world of a fearful avoidance strategy. Now, I haven't mentioned a secure strategy. We will talk about that later, but just as a little bit of a spoiler, it is probably the most potent factor in protecting people from addiction. But I often see addiction, I call it here the fifth strategy. And the reason I do that is because it functions very much like an attachment strategy. It helps regulate affect. It can also bring about experiences that can lower social inhibition so people can feel more connected. And neurobiologically, it actually hijacks the same neural networks responsible for the pleasure and reward system. And why that's important is that system, those pathways are the exact same pathways for social engagement and attachment. When we feel distressed, if we have a secure environment and we're securely attached, we have a neurological experience of wanting to reach to people we love, right? Our dopamine will drive us in that direction. If addiction hijacks that system, our neurochemicals start to send us in a different direction. We start to use and we become habituated. We make the habit of using and we stop relying on others to be the people we look for reassurance and support, right? It's like those muscles atrophy. And that's a very, very real process. So here is something that is really important, and this sent me a bit on my journey. But we have made in the last many years, I would say, we've been treating addiction for, let's say, 100 years. And in the last 30 years, we've had scientific technology that can scan the brain, and this has been applied to addiction research. And so we can tell with exquisite detail how neurochemicals become imbalanced in the brain on addiction. We can also pay attention to neural networks, and we can watch them become diseased or corroded. We can see the impact chronic addiction has on them very clearly. But here's the sad reality, that with all of this incredible advances in medical understanding and technology and what we know about addiction, in the research in the addiction field, the best treatment centers in residential treatment, they boast a 30% success rate. And, just to put that in perspective for you, how many of you are in private practice? You could just raise your hand. How many of you have a website for your private practice? You can raise your hand. Anybody have a website? Well, people here in the States have websites it's one of the ways we market our practices. But if I would never dream of putting on my website, I can guarantee you a 30% success rate, right? That's insane. But that's really what the treatment industry is showing. So if I say that differently, the people that we want to help who are struggling with addiction are really not getting the help they're looking for. And so a question becomes why? And one of the interesting things, as far as these advances in the addiction field have gone, there's very little agreement in the field about what causes addiction. Some people say it's a disease, the brain disease model, and there's plenty of research on that. Some people say actually there's an old phrase that's called chemical hooks. The chemicals, the substances put their hooks in you so intensely, you can never shake free of them. Another one has to do with it's a lapse in moral or ethical character. And anybody that has spent time in 12-step groups hears a phrase over and over about character defects. And I'm not here to say anything negative about 12-step groups. But what I am trying to say is there isn't an agreement in the field about what really causes addiction. And there's also woven into the language and the process of treating addiction can be some very shameful things. And, that's one of the main reasons, in my opinion, that people get caught in addiction, to cope with a sense of shame, which of course accompanies trauma, right? It's one way of keeping all of that at bay. So our field is at a crossroads right now. And having spent a lot of time with Sue over the years, she used to joke around a lot and say something very similar to where the addiction field is now. She said, in the field of marriage and couples therapy, she says, it felt like a bunch of interventions searching around for a theory. So of course, she created a theory, right? And a very powerful one. But I think there's a lot of relevance. And so I kind of tried to create some form of a definition that I thought, regardless what area you believe is the main cause of addiction, this tends to sit pretty well with people. People seem to accept this, and that is addiction is a condition in which a person engages in the use of a substance or a behavior for which the rewarding effects provide a compelling incentive to repeatedly pursue the behavior despite detrimental consequences. So I'd be very curious, what do you all think of that? Is that sufficient? Yeah, kind of fits? Okay. So let's do this together. Let's put this under the microscope a little bit and let's take a closer look. And what do you see gets highlighted in this but behavior? So if I oversimplify, addiction is defined as a behavior. And why am I even taking time in this particular webinar to talk about this? Well, the way something is defined in our field is really important because theory gets based on definition, and then treatment direction gets based on theory. And so if we see everything that's going on in addiction as a behavior, and there's an entire segment of the mental health field called behavioral health, which I'll just be very candid, I really dislike that term. I think it's very reductionistic. But what it really says and where it points us to is if we're going to see addiction as a behavior, then treatment is going to be very narrow. It's going to be about skills, right? And skills are great. And quite frankly, I think they're essential when we're working with addiction. They're really important. That's one way we have to modify some of what we do in EFT. We do want to stabilize addiction, but skills are really meant for one thing and one thing only, and that is to stabilize addiction, stabilize triggers, predict them, have strategies around them, be able to stabilize cravings so we don't relapse, all sorts of things like that. But the reality is that is what it's really for, and it's really not for anything else. So here's where things get very, very complicated, in my opinion, that it's not enough, essentially. So how I would frame this is it's necessary, but it's really not sufficient. And I don't know how many of you have worked in the field of addiction. Has anybody? Well, there's a very common experience for those of us who have spent time working in the addiction field, and that is the experience of teaching our patients or our clients. There's a very strange sound. I don't know if y'all can hear that. It almost sounds like okay.
It's like wind.
It's like wind. Yes. So
Thank you.
yeah, thank you. And here would be the experience. We take what we've learned about empirically validated skills, and we could work with a client. Let's say we're working in a treatment center and we know someone has a pass for the weekend. They're doing pretty well. They get to go home and see their family or something like that. And they say, I'm very nervous because there's going to be this situation, or this person is going to come into my life who I really have had a lot of conflict with. I'm not sure how to deal with this. I'm scared I'm going to relapse. So we offer all sorts of skills about how to cope with that. We maybe even do role plays if we're in a group. And so we prepare. These skills are empirically validated. They're very good skills. And yet people go out into the world, and in spite of knowing all this information and practicing these skills, all sorts of stressful things happen. I call it the perfect storm blows in. And of course, it doesn't hold. Instead, people relapse. And so what I presume from this is actually it's not enough. Skills are great for stabilizing addiction. But in my experience, if you scratch the surface of addiction, what you find underneath is trauma and shame. And skills are not designed to help people process and heal from trauma and shame. We can stop the addictive behavior, which gives people a chance, but it never touches this. And any of us who've been in the addiction field long enough know people that have had double digits of years of recovery. I had a friend who was in AA and was a sponsor, and he actually drove a mobile methadone unit down to some of the more dangerous urban centers in Atlanta. And some really bad stuff happened in his personal life. And this man is no longer alive. He knew this is not an uncommon story, and I'm not unique in this, but the skills were not enough. He knew the skills, but I don't think he had ever gotten to really do the deep healing from some very difficult parts of his life. So we're left with a really complicated situation. And in my opinion, it leaves us with a very, very complex psychotherapy. That in EFT, all of a sudden, stage one is not so simple. It's not as predictable. We can't just work with a cycle without all sorts of obstacles. We have impasses. I don't know how many of you have ever tried to take someone struggling with addiction head on and have them own their step in the cycle being addiction. You're going to get caught in the biggest power struggle ever, right? There are ways of working with that, but it's really difficult because there is so much shame. People tend not to feel very good about using and then that hurting the people they love. And then the truth is, if you can't have somebody take ownership of their step in the cycle, we don't have a cycle to work with. So it's very easy to get stuck there. The other thing, in a general way, that seems very difficult is people's emotional experience. And it seems we have two ends of a continuum. We have people who have systematically deactivated and distanced themselves from their emotional experience for a lifetime. So we are trying to find a way to help engage and identify emotional experience. And it's like reaching around in the dark. It can take a really long time to help people start to find their way into their emotional world. And the therapy feels like it's moving so slowly. Therapists get frustrated, clients get frustrated. We also have people on the other end of that continuum who do have access to their emotional worlds. They just can't tolerate it very well. So if we start helping engage emotion and we move people into a more raw emotional place, or even more acutely, their partner starts sharing their pain of what it's been like to have to deal with the addiction, people tend to get very overwhelmed. They tip out of their window of tolerance. And what do people who have used addiction for a lifetime do when they feel emotionally overwhelmed? They relapse. So we have a very delicate stage one. Now in stage two, it's equally as delicate. Whoops. But for somewhat different reasons. And when we were doing the addiction study, there were two cases in particular that really stood out to me. And I used to consult with Sue about this because we did it withdrawal engagement. And a
Can I
very
please what? No. Can I please what? What were you gonna tell me? Iba a
Ron,
pedirle que ya no la lea, Moishe. Dije,
if somebody
relájate, me pone.
could mute their microphone. Thanks. We had two people who did really beautiful withdrawal engagement. One person, so much so, she was not only showing up much more spontaneously and much more emotionally available in her relationship, she started a very solvent business. She used to be the under-functioning partner. She created a bakery and it was very successful. So what we thought we were seeing with these two people who were withdrawers and did successful key change events were people who were really stabilized. And we saw something else happen when their partner, who were the pursuers, started processing unprocessed attachment injuries. And it was just too much for the withdrawer. They felt so much shame and pain. They relapsed. They had to leave the study, and it was really sad. And we were shocked. So the reason I tell you this is it opened up a way of understanding something differently, which is if you think about the timeline of people's lives, that oftentimes people who are struggling with addiction, they come into EFT, we may do very, very good work, move them through stage one, they're de-escalated. And then in stage two, on that timeline, they've had a tiny little segment of time where they have become aware of their emotional experience and begun to do the work to be a little more able to tolerate emotion, to be able to lean in and also receive emotion. It's very fragile. And sometimes it doesn't look fragile on the surface. And so we can move people into a certain place in that process therapeutically, but it's like being on thin ice. And so we have to be very, very cautious and careful because people easily relapse at that time too. So my whole point with this is it changes the territory for EFT. It's not as simple or straightforward as we would like it to be. Now, on the positive side of things, I was mentioning that secure attachment is the most significant protective factor against addiction. It inoculates people from addiction. And in the literature, about 2/3 to 3/4 of the different factors that protect people from getting caught in addiction have to do with attachment. It's really powerful. So I think what we offer in EFT is very, very valuable. And I think all of us who are already doing EFT, you have within your reach the ability to do this really, really well. So that being said, I want to kind of, are we finished in a half hour? Is that right? What time do we finish here? How much more time do we have is what I'm asking.
Norma, you're
Estás
muted.
muteada, Norma.
20 minutes.
How many?
20 minutes, more or
20,
less.
okay. Okay, sorry. I'm going to jump to something else then. The main thing I wanted to tell you in this part has to do with there's a lot of very interesting research. And what I came to find out in my own explorations is the research that has informed treatment has been done with three different primary groups. College students, people who were patients here in the States, something called the Veterans Administration. They have been in combat. They're for people in the military, many who have returned being very traumatized. The other group are people who have been in treatment. And the sad thing that's happened is the data from all of that research, which is the most prominent research, is what we have created addiction theory and then treatment on. There were some studies that were done that, for whatever reason, we don't hear about. They remain in the shadows. I don't know why. And in these studies, they were called epidemiological studies. And what they started to notice in studies that had 40-something thousand participants that were an excellent cross-section of the population, that they noticed that people who had met DSM criteria for substance use disorder anytime prior to this 12-month period, 75% of those people no longer met the criteria. They no longer met criteria for substance use disorder. They no longer met criteria for substance abuse or substance dependence. And here is the wild part. They did so with no formal treatment. So what that did is it turned upside down all the prominent theories. It dispels, in my opinion, the brain disease model. Just because people have a genetic predisposition does not mean predetermination, right? People could not simply be addicts based on their moral character, or people are somehow able to get out from under using substances or behaviors. Chemical hooks can't be true. So what I found started to shine a bright light on maybe what we should be looking at is attachment. We're understanding secure attachment as the most prominent protective factor. If you listen to what the ACE study is really telling us, is that by mistake, they removed the thing that people had been self-medicating unprocessed trauma. They took compulsive eating out of the picture. Initially, these subjects did great. They made a lot of progress. They were living much more healthy lifestyles, and the majority of them all relapsed. And they couldn't figure it out until they looked into people's histories. And they started to see that this compulsive behavior, compulsive overeating, actually had a functional purpose. It was an action tendency. It was an action tendency meant to self-medicate trauma. So if we look in the field of trauma and we look at the field of attachment, we have incredible information about really what might be at the heart of addiction, and will give us the opportunity to serve our patients or our clients better. So I want to share with you a little bit about this case. It was in an externship. I did a live session, and the husband had been struggling with addiction for a very... I say this to you because I also don't know anybody or any EFT therapists who are not working with trauma. And if I had a Venn diagram in the center between addiction and trauma, there are a lot of the same processes going on. Just people have done something different with it behaviorally, right? And you know how to do that really well already. There are some things we have to modify, but the bulk of what we're doing in EFT, my sense is you probably already know how to do, and that's good news. So I think what we're really bringing to the addiction field is something really, really helpful. Norma mentioned I wrote this book, and it's a very simple workbook, and I call it a guided journal because it brings people into a self-reflective process about their emotional worlds. And what's very strange is that so many people struggling with addiction don't really make that connection, that the thing that is driving my addictive process is this pain I've buried very deeply down inside. What I've been doing with it, because it's very simple, the book is concepts and lots of exercises, and then it turns into things people can do with their significant others. But it has been very easy for me to create a program. I'm starting to create a program that I'm bringing into residential treatment right now. And so I'm working with kind of process groups based on EFT and attachment concepts, and it's going really well. And one of my colleagues, there's a slide in here, has been using this a lot. And she said, Michael, it is it is changing the culture in our treatment center, that people who have struggled with addiction and have been really attempting to find their way into recovery, but it's recovery's and the addiction world is very shame-based, not on purpose, and I'm not fault finding, but there's something that is working against the goal of helping people who struggle with addiction. This, of course, is very non-pathologizing, right? And it helps people start to get curious about their inner worlds and begin talking about things they've never really talked about. And it's really interesting to sit with people who have never done that before because you watch light bulbs turn on, they're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. So what we are doing, my big goal at this point in time is how to bring EFT to the addiction world. And all of us who are working with couples or families, and I know a lot of you do EFIT, working with addiction, you're offering a tremendous service to people who are struggling. So I applaud you all. I see these hands, but I applaud you for the work you're doing. And this is really teachable and learnable. And it would be my privilege to have you join us in Mexico. It would be a ton of fun. And I am working on getting the book translated into Spanish. I've been talking with my publisher, and there is a colleague of yours from Mexico City, Carla, I can't remember her last name right now, but I put her in touch with our publisher. So she said she would be interested in translating that. So thank you for being here. I'm sorry that I got a little carried away with time, but I hope this has been helpful and useful and time well spent for you. And thank you, Norma, for inviting me to do this. I really appreciate you. And I hope our paths cross in the future. Okay.
Thank you, Michael. And can I just take one more
Yes.
moment from everyone's time? Norma, sorry. Can I?
Yes.
Can I take just some? Thank you. I'd just like to bring Vicos and Susie, si están ahí, para que entre todos, y Mónica también, si quiere abrir su micrófono, para que entre todos les invitemos a nuestro curso con Michael el próximo año.
Así es. Así es, yo creo que Michael, thank you very much, ¿no? Es una probadita, como decía él, de lo que nos espera, ¿no? Nos quedamos con muchísimas ganas de seguir aprendiendo y por eso, pues aquí brindamos la invitación súper cordial, no solamente un taller con Michael, sino con toda la comunidad, una reunión de EFT que ya hace falta desde hace tiempo, de vernos en vivo, de tocarnos, de abrazarnos, de aprender juntos. So, Michael, thank you. We will see you in February.
Yes.
Very, very motivated to do so. So,
That's great.
thank you very much, ¿no? La comunidad
Well,
EFT México está super proud y perdónenme mi Spanglish, but the emotion is here. Y la invitación está aquí para todos, para que vengan a la Ciudad de México a hacer este taller todos juntos.
Y para quienes no pueden viajar porque están demasiado lejos, ¿qué hay, Vicos? O
Pues,
Susi, ¿qué tenemos por
sí, a
ahí?
ver, Susi por ahí anda, no
No sé
sé,
si sigue Susi, no puedo ver acá, pero...
no,
Creo
no
que
la
no
veo.
está.
Ah, ok, ya no está, pero bueno.
Mm, sí,
¿Qué hay para
hay
quienes...
varias cosas.
¿Mm?
Hay varias cosas, ¿no? Creo que, digo, está esta parte de poderlo transmitir
Sí,
vía Zoom o vía
sí,
lo que
vía
sea.
Zoom,
Ujú,
sí.
ujú,
Vamos a tener una persona encargada de seguir a Michael con la cámara, una buena traducción. Esto es solamente disponible para quienes viven en países que están muy lejos, en Sudamérica o en España, por ejemplo, en Dominicana, por ahí vi a alguien que estaba en Dominicana. Por supuesto, contáctenos y encontramos una manera de que ustedes participen. Esto va a ser también un evento interactivo. Vamos a tener maneras también de moderar. Alguien estará moderando ya para que estén en contacto con todo el grupo y con Michael también.
ujú.
Bueno, muchas
Y hay
gracias.
otro regalito que es que Ali va a dar fundamentos de EFT para las personas que quieran hacer un refresh, que quieran refrescar, que quieran volver a aprender o reaprender el modelo, pero también estamos permitiendo que ustedes puedan invitar terapeutas que quieran conocer el modelo para que vengan a este pequeño curso introductorio y explicar el modelo a estas personas que quieran conocerlo.
Y
Sí,
justo, bueno, justo estábamos
gracias.
platicando ayer, antier, le estaba yo preguntando a Lee que si el curso de Michael Barnett es requisito tener formación en terapia focalizada en emociones, y me decía que no, que en realidad podemos abrirlo a cualquiera de nuestros colegas que trabaja con parejas, y sí va a ser recomendable que si no tienen formación en EFT, hagan el Fundamentals, son unas 6 horas y va a ser en algunos de los días previos, por Zoom, ¿cierto, Ali?
Sí, Moni, gracias. Estaba
Ujú.
respondiendo un mensaje, alguien que me preguntó directamente. Para quienes estén interesados en y quieran más información, escriban a hola@iftmexico.com, hola@iftmexico.com. Gracias, Mónica, y ahí nos veremos. El Fundamentals lo vamos a dar Mónica y yo. Ya la convencí de que se me una. Y bueno, es otro regalito para quienes ustedes recomienden, a quienes ustedes recomienden de primera mano, ustedes parte de la comunidad EFT hispanohablante, si ustedes recomiendan un colega, para que ese colega, si ese colega es nuevo en EFT y quiere tomar el Fundamentals, para ese recomendado el curso Fundamentals es gratis y se inscribe al curso. Ok, es un pequeño...
Puedes escribir en el chat el nombre, y para aquellos de Costa Rica ya estamos haciendo un grupo,
Sí,
entonces se comunican directamente conmigo y estamos organizando poder hacerlo con los mejores costos para poder acompañarlos. Ya somos 7
gracias.
en el camino,
Ya,
así que vamos para adelante. Michael, gracias, gracias.
De
por-
nada.
Thank you a lot.
You're
This
welcome.
was spectacular.
Oh,
And a lot of people came because this is something we really need to learn about, and we are willing to be able to be taught by you more and more.
wonderful.
So
Wonderful.
thank you,
You're
y
thank you,
welcome.
Michael.
hasta
Thank
pronto.
you. Okay.
Este es el último conversatorio. Nos vemos en enero del próximo año, porque es más difícil reunirnos en diciembre, que siempre tratamos, pero no lo logramos. Entonces estaré mandándoles la información para que nos veamos en enero. Esperamos que nuestra querida colega María Claudia y Maxi nos acompañen el año entrante en un conversatorio, así como Vicos. Entonces, nos vemos. Gracias.
Gracias,
Chao.
Norma.
Gracias.